Didn't you love that intro music? We've used it before. That is Gaiety in the Golden Age by Aaron Kenny. It is royalty free, so I did not pay for it, but I'm happy to give the guy credit, and I think you ought to go to his website and buy something. He deserves it. Thanks again to Nikki Hayworth for the animated opening, and Juan Camacho for the drawing of my head, which I have since decided makes me look like Richard Nixon. But hey, artist interpretation, right? What are you going to do? He's allowed. He can draw my head however he wants. I had a really good week, and I did, seriously. I think I did. I mean, perception is everything except for reality. But in my perception, I think I did well. And you can't quantify it. So I think that's where I am right now. Just like, this was a good week. But why? Why? What was really that different? I think it was just me figuring stuff out, going, oh, this really isn't that bad. Remember a week ago when I was kind of anxious about the reopening of society, like how am I going to act? Now I'm going, let me at it, you know? I want to get out there. I want to just have fun. I want there to be gaiety in the golden age. I want to go out and do stuff, you know? That's how I feel about that. And we're getting there. So that's a good thing to be happy about. And on that note, the guest is Tamar Kummel. She talks all about fighting for allergy-free food, which is an important thing. You're going to learn a lot in this conversation. I hope you check out the documentary that she made. It is very enlightening. Yeah, it's disturbing. It's a little troublesome, but it's also important. So check it out. Learn some things. Learn how you can change yourself for the better just by the foods you eat. There's some intel there. Look in the notes on whatever platform you're watching. Just scroll down, look at those notes. There's a lot of websites, a lot of resources, places where you can get to see the film. So check all that stuff out. I said wow in this interview like 12 seconds in, seriously. So if you're going to make wow a drinking game, get ready because it's coming fast. And then I also said whoa, whoa, like Joe Rogan says all the time, whoa. And I'm not even high. I just said whoa. But this is not a Joe Rogan knockoff show at all. I would never do that. I don't have that kind of time. So please enjoy this. Tamar, how are ya?
Hello, Joe.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm glad you're here too, because I have a lot of questions. I watched the documentary in the last couple of days, and wow, there's there's so much to talk about there because it is kind of scary what's going on with our food. But before we get to that, a little about your background. Where are you from originally, and where did you go to school, and what were your hopes and dreams growing up? You know, if you could encapsulate that into 30 seconds, I don't know.
I'm from New York City originally. My parents had a business in Vermont, so I was in Vermont every summer. So I spent all my winters in the most urban setting and all my summers in the most rural setting possible. So I didn't really fit in either place too much, although I'm really a city kid. We moved to New Hampshire, Hanover, New Hampshire, where Dartmouth College is, right before high school. And then I moved right back to New York City when I was 18 to go to performing arts school and then massage school after that. So I've been an actress, writer, director, producer, stand-up comic, you name it, like actor, singer, dancer to start with, and then worked my way into writing and producing and stuff after that.
This is one of the reasons we get along is because all of my guests, it seems, are what I've recently heard the term multi-potentialite. They do a lot of things, and you might have the record for most things that you can do or have done. So
I have a lot of hyphenates.
Yeah, definitely. Now, The whole thing about food allergies, when did you first notice that you had a food allergy?
Well, so that's an interesting story because I definitely had been sick my whole entire life. When I was very little, I would get really sick every single morning before going to school, which is partially because I was having panic attacks before going to school, except it would all manifest into my stomach. So I had no idea that they were panic attacks until actually watching an episode of Oprah much later in life and realized, oh, that's what was happening to me.
We owe her so much.
I know.
The legions of people she has helped.
So much.
Add that to the list. So how old were you when you first started panicking before going to school?
I started going to school when I was 5 for kindergarten. I didn't go before that. And that was, in fact, I was so sick during kindergarten. I had strep throat for like months that I actually missed school for months. And I used to be more out of school than I was in school. I had more incompletes than almost anything else. I had the most number of absences than anybody else because I would get sick before, so I might be a little bit late to school. I'd get to school, I'd get teased or bullied, and tortured because I was always sick, and which would make me more sick, which would then send me to the nurse's office, then they would send me home. So it was this continuing cycle. So my mom, bless her heart, had an idea that there was a good chance that that I was reactive to some sort of foods every day. So she was trying to like damper down and make it as bland a diet as possible. So every single morning she would give me buttered toast, chocolate Ovaltine with a raw egg in it, and and milk. And that's exactly everything that I'm actually reactive to.
Oh,
Dairy, eggs, chocolate. I mean, so she was essentially poisoning me every single day.
and she had no idea.
No, I mean, neither one of us had any idea.
So how did you finally figure that out?
So it wasn't until probably about 15, like between 15, 20 years ago that I was seeing an osteopath, which if your viewers don't know, an osteopath is somebody who can do adjustments because he works with the spine and with bones, but he also went to medical school. So he treats holistically. So he would discuss everything. He was some people's regular PCP, and some people would just go for adjustments. And I was saying to him, yeah, I've been like this my whole life. I have irritable bowel. I have, I mean, I'm always exhausted. I have dark circles underneath my eyes. I'm always kind of puffy. I sleep like 14 hours a day and I'm still exhausted. And I was chronically depressed. I, was suicidal. I mean, I had severe nightmares, like night terrors all the time. I mean, there was just any number of things that were going on with me. And I just thought, that's me. And he was like, well, have you ever been tested for food reactions, for food sensitivities? He was like, not necessarily food allergies, because it's two different things, but food sensitivities, along with a host of other things that he wanted me to get tested for. I had every single thing that he mentioned, and it's changed a little bit over the years, but at that particular time, I tested positive for gluten, for dairy, for eggs, for corn, for beef. I had high mercury, so I had to avoid a whole bunch of different kinds of fish. I mean, because of the irritable bowel, I'm very sensitive to fiber or citrus acids. And so I can't have fruit, I can't have raw vegetables. I mean, there are so many things that I can't do. And so every single day, if I leave my house, it's a choice of, okay, what's the lessest, the smallest cheat that I can get away with that I won't be too sick tomorrow. But I went from sleeping 14 hours and being tired to sleeping 7 hours a day and having plenty of energy. The depression started to go away. Most of the headaches started to go away. I mean, the dark circles pretty much went away, just everything. I mean, it completely changed my life.
This is just by eliminating certain foods.
Yes, which, I mean, is not easy,
right?
Because you have to be really, really diligent, because most people don't realize that wheat, which is like flour, is in everything. Anytime you saute any piece of fish or chicken or, or almost anything at a restaurant, they dust it with flour first, or they'll dust French fries with flour or with sugar or with, unless you know how to cook, which I didn't at the time, you would have no idea how they actually do things in a restaurant. And at the time, this was so much earlier than anybody else knew what gluten was or had ever heard the term gluten-free or anything. And so I had to keep asking people at restaurants, what's in it? Because there was no FDA, there were no allergens listed on packaging and things like that. I had to go to good restaurants where you have real chefs who cook real food, who can tell you exactly what they're putting in something. You can't go to, I went to McDonald's early on and I said, what kind of oil do you, deep fry your fries? And they said, vegetable oil. And I said, what vegetable? And they said, vegetable oil. And I was like, I just we just kept going back and forth because I was like, how do people not understand? Technically, corn or soybean or canola, those are all vegetable oils. So I need to know,
I imagine the average patron at McDonald's probably doesn't drill down that far, so there isn't too much
Definitely not.
need for them to know this. So what I want to know before we continue is, what do you eat? What can you eat now? Because you just eliminated, well, it seems like half the food around. So is there a typical week with your diet? How do you get all your RDAs?
Believe it or not, I mean, I'm such a foodie, and I am now, an actual chef, like I'm a personal chef, and so I eat very well, and I can eat most proteins. I can, so chicken and some fish and some pork, and I mean, I'll eat anything that I'm allowed to eat, plus rice, cooked vegetables. There are a lot of things that I try to avoid, but at the same time, I can do little bits of certain things, but I eat zero dairy for sure, because that gives me headaches. I'm allergic to chocolate, which I adore, but it makes me absolutely insane and sick as a dog. So,
So now,
but you have to cook everything from scratch. That's no
I was
packaged
going to
food.
say that I imagine you're very hands-on as far as preparing all your own meals, and you go to fewer restaurants than you used to, especially the last year because of what's been going
Yeah.
on.
Oh,
But
I have to say, they first diagnosed me and they said you have to avoid this massive list of stuff, I had to throw out every single thing that I had in my kitchen because I did not have anything that was not packaged. I didn't know how to cook, and the only thing I had like in my refrigerator that I thought I could eat was a handful of blueberries, which I'm allergic to. So
lovely.
so I pretty much didn't eat for the first 24 hours and just sat there crying, going, I don't know what I can eat.
Well, yeah, that's horrifying. Now, there is a side of me that's thinking, if this happened to me, well, I've been meaning to drop a few pounds anyway. Nope. You're just upset that half the foods on earth just right off the table.
Well, it's a common misconception that so many people think that going gluten-free is a weight loss technique, but it's not at all. Because if you go naturally gluten-free and you avoid all bread products or fried products, that are breaded and things like that, depending on your genetic makeup, you may very well lose quite a bit of weight. But if you replace it with all the products that are out there now, of gluten-free breads and gluten-free cookies and gluten-free snacks and all that kind of stuff, that's actually higher in fat and sugar and carbs sometimes than any of the regular products. So if you just want to eat healthy and you just want, you go to a lot more greens and and natural proteins, and you cook more stuff from scratch, that's great, because you want to avoid the packaged kind of foods anyway. But really, if you can eat gluten and you have no problem with it, then fiber is very healthy for you. Whole wheat products are very good for you. It just might kill me, so I don't do
Other
it.
than that, you know what? It's funny you were mentioning gluten. I had to take a homemaking class in 7th grade, and they explained to us that if you mix flour with eggs and water or whatever it was, if you whip it too much, it gets kind of thick and sticky and stretchy. And she called that gluten. Now, I know gluten is what the property that gives bread that springy feel, but the conversation about how it can have an allergic reaction with people, completely off the table back then. No one was talking about it. So when people started
Absolutely.
talking about gluten allergies years later, I thought, what, gluten? Like if you whip the yeast too much, you get gluten? What's the problem? Just don't whip it so badly. I don't understand.
Your
But
teacher was way ahead of her time.
apparently, she didn't seem
Yeah.
like it though. Now, can food allergies reverse themselves? Because you mentioned you couldn't eat any fish, and then you mentioned a moment ago you can eat a little fish. So can a person with food allergies undo it somehow?
So it depends on what the sensitivities are. And because, like, I'll tell you, my mom ate everything under the sun for most of her life. And then in her late 40s, immediately she had a giant reaction to corn. Now, it happens to coincide with when corn started becoming GMO. So it's possible that that was a big part of it, but it triggered a massive autoimmune reaction for her, and she could no longer eat corn. Even in infinitesimal traces of corn, she would avoid as best as she could. She wore a medic alert bracelet, and if she had a reaction, it would you know, she would just blow up with a whole bunch of reactions to everything else. So that happened in her late 40s. So your body chemistry changes, you know, your microbiome changes over the years. And there's, you know, you may, I mean, like a lot of children will be born with food sensitivities and then they'll grow out of them. But just as they can grow out of them, you can grow into them too. And part of the problem is that if you have any gut permeability, any sort of immune compromised system to start with, and you eat the same thing over and over and over again, which again, you may not know that wheat is in everything, dairy is in everything, corn is generally GMO corn is in everything, soy is in everything, because they're all subsidized farming. And so they end up being staples within everything. And so the more you eat of that, even rice can eventually suddenly make you reactive to it because your body gets overloaded with it and it starts to produce antibodies against it. So you have to vary what it is that you eat very carefully. And depending on how reactive you are to certain things, you might be able to get it away. So wheat now, I seem to be able to have a little bit and it doesn't bother me so much as far as I can tell, but the dairy has gotten even worse. If I have a bite of cheese, forget it.
Is this
I'm
the kind
dead.
of thing, because you were talking about how humans, we change as we age. Is this the kind of thing that
Mhm.
you can affect on your own? Can you actually do things to undo it? Or do you just have to wait and see what your body's like in 5 or 10 years?
It's a really good question, and there really is no answer to that as far as I know. The only place that is doing a lot of research right now is the Sean N. Parker research facility in Stanford University, where I went and I chatted with one of the nurses there.
They're in
And
the documentary.
yeah, they're doing research on how to essentially change kids that have peanut allergies, like the severe peanut allergies, by desensitizing them, creating the antibodies very early on in such minute amounts that it will eventually build up the immunity, which is much the same way that homeopathic remedies work or vaccines work.
Yeah, I
You know?
remember hearing that a thing on NPR partially blamed the rise in peanut allergies over the years to helicopter parents because they wouldn't let their kids eat dirt. I mean, obviously, you love your baby, you don't want them to eat a bug or anything, but apparently, they'd gotten so overboard with protecting their infants that their infants didn't get into trouble and they didn't let their natural immunity build up by trying things, which sounds totally counterintuitive, but you got to let your kid eat dirt once in a while, I guess, is the answer.
Right. Well, kids theoretically in big cities where they're out and about and constantly exposed to toxins of different kinds, theoretically have a better immune system than kids that are raised in the country and aren't exposed to all of that. So the scientists unfortunately keep changing about, yes, expose your kids to all of these things as an infant, or don't expose them to, just do it from ages 0 to 3 months, or it has changed so many times just in the past few years. And luckily I don't have kids and I don't need to worry about that.
Yeah,
But
I do think, I don't have kids either, but I do wonder, how do parents negotiate all this? Because it sounds like a nightmare if your child has an allergy.
it
Now,
is very complicated.
at what point did you say to yourself, I have to make a documentary about this?
So it was my mom. It was really my mom, because as soon as she became reactive to corn, she immediately went on rampage. And my mom was old and very deaf and a little batty, and she had to call every single company whose product she would buy and say, is there corn in this? Can you figure out if there's corn in this? Can you mark it to say if there's corn in it? You know, trying to write to everybody saying it would be great if you could put on the products that it has corn in it for those of us that have corn allergies, because corn's not one of the big 7 or the big 9 even at the moment, but it's just off of that. But the corn producers are so powerful that it's pretty much never going to be one of the listed allergens. And yet the people who are reactive to corn are very, very reactive. And because like 80% of the corn that's out there now is GMO corn, it's very hard to find even organic. And so it was from her asking so many questions and then me being diagnosed that eventually I started I mean, every single person who ends up having food allergies, or especially parents whose children have food reactions, we all become researchers. We all want to find answers. And there were so many questions that came up. I thought, I need to look for answers. And that was, and I'm a filmmaker, you know, like that was my automatic sort of, if I'm going to research this, I'm going to film it while I do it. But
Now,
it's not about me. The film is not about my journey at all, or my mom's. It was really trying to find answers for everybody else out there to figure out, okay, you might have regular headaches, you might be having nightmares, you might be depressed, and you would have no idea that it's because you're eating gluten and your body can't handle it.
well, yeah, there's that quote in the movie that says the food industry and the health industry don't seem to communicate with each other, which to me is insane, because if you're a doctor and you're going to diagnose somebody, it seems to me one of the first things you would diagnose is what's been going into you.
Right.
The food, the drinks, the air, the smoking, the radon or whatever it is that's in your environment. Find out what those things are, and yet they don't talk about food, which to me is insane. So let's talk for a minute about. We'll get to the nuts and bolts of food allergies and everything else that entails. But when it comes to making a documentary,
Yeah.
how do you even start? I mean, obviously research the subject, but how do you know how much it's going to cost? How do you raise the money? And then how do you know if you're going to have enough? And how do you know how long it's going to be and covering the subject? I mean, how do you even begin to wrap your head around this?
One step at a time. I mean, I'm the most organized person on earth. And so that was easy for me to try and figure out, okay, I need equipment, I need time, I'm probably going to need to travel, it's going to cost approximately this much. The filming itself shouldn't cost anything unless I'm traveling to do it. And then submitting to festivals after that cost another $1,000, you know. So I did crowdfunding on Indiegogo and I raised some money, but I had said, look, if it takes me 6 months to do it, which is hysterical because no documentary takes 6 months, but you know, if I raise tons and tons of money, then I can do this really quickly, really easily. If I don't raise any money, it's going to take me a lot longer, but it's not going to stop me from doing it. And so I just, I budgeted as best that I could. I kept getting, Lindsay Fisher did all the graphics for the film, and she did it for free because she has food allergies, and she just volunteered her time, which is remarkable. And so I had quite a few people along the way that were like, this is important and I just want to help. And so, and my parents were very supportive, I have to say too. So
Nice. So you get rolling on this and you start filming, and as it started to take shape, what sort of things did you realize? Like, oh my God, I didn't realize the problem was this bad, or this is another chapter of this thing I need to include in this. What sort of surprises emerged as you started researching this?
Well, early on, the only pre-interview that I did was actually farmer Mike Snow. And I chatted with him for a while and I said, I'm looking for answers. And he said, you're only going to find more questions. And that became the tagline for my film. So many questions, so few answers, because he was 100% right. Because like with GMOs, for example, there are no statistics on it because they started filtering that into what we eat without ever telling anyone. So if you don't keep track of what is actually GMO, how do you know if people are getting sick from something that they didn't even know they were eating? So there was a lot of that kind of thing. I wanted to have a whole section in the film about how they chose the 7 allergens that they list on products. But as you saw, the FDA wouldn't talk to me, the EPA wouldn't talk to me, USDA wouldn't, all of these places that I went after just, for the most part, radio silence. And so I wanted to present 2 sides of the GMO debate and, the labeling debate and all that. And what was really funny to me was just the fact that there's nobody on the other side that would talk to me. So the film, kind of presents more of a one-sided than I wanted it to, but I went at it very like, I want to know everything, just tell me and I will present it and people can make their own decisions. But if other sides won't talk to me, then they don't get seen,
Well, now, did they simply ignore you, or did they actually get like viscerally angry with you for asking, or did they just say this is not our policy to discuss? How did that go?
Well, it depended on the agency. So there's a there's a government type agency that I won't say the name that has offices in Washington, D.C. Now, I happen to be in Washington, D.C. doing interviews and doing aerial photography and stuff for the film. And I could not get them to return my calls. And so I thought, screw it, I'm going there with my camera. I'm going to knock on the door and I'm going to come in and I'm going to say who I am and I'm going to see if I can get anybody to talk to me. And they were like, we don't even exist. What are you talking about? Get out of here. Like
We don't even exist.
I was like, these are your offices. And they were like, no, it's not. No, I don't know what you're talking. It was the weirdest thing, but they would not talk to me. And then there was a woman from the USDA who was the only person who was going to talk to me. And coincidence or not, she was fired before she spoke to me.
Whoa.
So yeah, go figure.
That's a little weird.
I thought so.
I can't say for sure why she was fired, but the optics of that look pretty bad. So
yeah.
Damn. And I mean, the fact that they're not talking to you, that says a lot already. That says tons. And I think folks need to do their own research. And by the way, time out. Everybody, there is some good news. I know things look awful, but this ends on a hopeful note. I promise. I think. So, you know what got me? I mean, looking in the documentary, there were so many things in there that are a little shocking. I remember in particular a moment where you were talking about all the sub-agencies that are responsible for food investigations and oversight. And some of them were split so weirdly. Like, for example, there's one agency that's in charge of investigating sausage and a different agency in charge of investigating sausage casings. Do you have any idea how this kind of moronic bureaucracy happened? Did you get any answers on that at all? Or is it just government's going to government?
I mean, there were a lot of food production acts that happened at different times. And so different agencies were put in charge of different things. And, you know, we didn't used to have frozen pizza that had all these different toppings on it. I mean, you know, when these things were sort of created, there were maybe 2 brands of frozen foods. You know what I mean? So
Mama Celeste. Remember Mama Celeste?
Exactly. So, well, Swansons and Stouffer's, that was what I grew up eating, you know. That's why I'm well preserved, because that's all I ate when I was a kid.
And we got our iron. I mean, there's plenty of aluminum in those things. Got our little metal in those things too.
That's right. So, so I think that things were just sort of given out piecemeal based on what it was, but has never been updated. And because so much of it is self-reporting, you're not really getting the full answer when it comes to anything. And they just don't work together. And not to mention they have other things to worry about, you know, but the scary part is really all of the lobbying about, you know, against having anything labeled this has GMO. I mean, if they think it's safe and they want us to think it's safe, put it on the products, you know.
You mentioned that there was one graphic in there that said that when it comes to GMO reporting, it's voluntary oversight. And the companies that make GMO food simply tell the FDA, we think it's safe. And that's the end of the conversation. So not only is there no oversight, but the FDA is somewhat toothless to begin with. So yeah, who knows what's
isn't that scary? That was really scary.
Well, now, I mean, I'm not defending any of these corporate food practices, but at the same time, we're not all dead. So it could be worse. Now, occasionally, it's true.
Yeah, but it hasn't been around for that long.
True. I mean, we do wonder what the long-term consequences are going to be. I mean, once in a while, somebody dies of E. coli, and then that creates a lawsuit and that sort of thing. That's bad, but at least that's not widespread.
So no, but what if it's causing lots of cancers that we don't know?
Exactly.
What if it's causing, you know, the boom in Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, or, you know, we don't know because nobody's able to do research on it.
Now, what was the origins of GMO food? Was it just so they can mass produce it or something, or preserve it longer?
Once you create a GMO food, you can patent it.
So they're trying to patent food that God created.
So the film will say this a lot better than I will, but if you splice different things together, like say, you know, there's hundreds of varieties of apples right now, just as an example. And so you can, through selection, through hybridization, An organic farmer can still figure out, I want these properties, I don't want these properties. And in a completely natural way, outside of a lab, they can figure out how to make it more resistant to certain bugs, or last longer, or more redder, or whatever they want. They can do that. But with GMOs in a lab, they can create, the perfect looking apple that has almost zero nutrients, but that will last on a truck for the next 4 months and never go bad, which is kind of terrifying. And within it, perhaps the reason that it looks like so red and beautiful is because it actually has genes from a tomato in it. Well, what if you're allergic to tomatoes, but you're eating this apple? So, I mean, it's the same thing with how they feed chickens or how they feed beef, and what all natural means, which is really nothing compared to grass-fed or organic or any of that. Like, do you want chicken that's being fed with corn if you're allergic to corn? Right. So there's a lot of things in there that you want them to be labeled better and just be explained to us better. I don't trust GMOs, and from all the research I did, I buy organic, or at least locally, or at farmers markets, so that you can talk to the people that are producing them and say, okay, what do you use? Because just because something doesn't say organic on it doesn't mean that they don't work in an organic fashion. They may just not have gone through the process of getting certified. So don't assume that it's not done in a healthy organic way. But if you can eat organically, I absolutely recommend doing it that way.
Now, does certified organic mean something?
It means that they use absolutely no pesticides.
Okay, and that's not some government BS. That's a legit thing. So if someone says they're certified
that is
organic,
a legit thing.
Okay,
good. There's no pesticides. There should be no hormones, no antibiotics.
Yeah, because I've heard
in the feed, in the sprays they use, and all of that kind of stuff.
I've heard terms like all natural, which just seems like a vague, pointless term. Like,
it means absolutely nothing. No, natural flavoring means absolutely nothing, which is the last, ingredient on 50 million things that it says natural flavor. If something said natural flavoring, my mom, allergic to corn, would not use it. She wouldn't eat it because, who knew what it was?
Right.
It doesn't mean anything.
Now, how much, I know there's the whole correlation causality argument, because there's been a rise in all kinds of diseases that magically coincided with the use of Roundup, or magically coincided with the use of GMOs in the food. So it's not that hypothetical to say that one caused the other, but how much actual study has there been proving that GMO food causes this, or that Roundup has caused a certain thing?
There are a lot of lawsuits constantly going on of people suing that they have gotten sick from using Roundup. It's mostly farmers, not necessarily people who are eating the products, because they may not necessarily know that they're eating something that has these pesticides on them. But you have to understand that Monsanto and a lot of the other pharmaceutical companies are the ones who have created the GMOs. And so if they patent them and they happen to make you sick, then you're actually buying their pharmaceuticals to get better. And all of this is completely outlawed in Europe. So a lot of the propaganda that we see about, we do GMOs because, there isn't enough food for everybody in the world. And so, we're creating more food and we're sending it. Well, they won't accept any of it because it's GMO. They ship it right back to us. So we have, in the US, we have more food allergies, more sensitivities, more illness, more Alzheimer's, more dementia, more all of these things. And how can you not assume that it's at least partially due to what we eat? I mean, it's also environmental, it's the stress levels, it's all of that. But, if you eat the best way possible, you're able to deal with everything else better, more efficiently anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I was also thinking that if you look at the Guinness book, the new records for the oldest human ever, they're no longer in the United States.
Oh, no.
It's always someone in Japan or France or something like that. We used to hold that record, but no, we don't do that anymore.
No. I think a woman in Italy just turned 116. So I told my dad I would tell him if he lived that long. She's waiting for a train. It can take a long time, for sure.
So now just a little primer also, can you go over the differences between, I should have talked about this earlier, food allergy versus, is it insensitivity or
Food
sensitivity?
food, there are a lot of different terms that are thrown about food allergy, food sensitivity, and food intolerance. Now, the most famous food intolerance is lactose intolerance. And so you would never say that somebody is allergic to dairy if they're lactose intolerant because they're not allergic to dairy. I am allergic to dairy because it immediately gives me tremendous sinus headaches and sinus pressure and kind of stuff, and so I don't have like stomach upset because of it. So I have a dairy allergy. I don't have a lactose intolerance. And if you have an intolerance, it's an enzyme that you're missing, which you can pop some pills to help you, or you can drink lactate or whatever. And also, if you have non-pasteurized milk, like raw milk, you may actually be able to digest that perfectly fine. So it's a different thing. But basically, the spectrum is sensitivity, and then within that, there are people who have allergies. They're different autoimmune responses. So your body provides antibodies to things that they can't identify or digest, and anything they think that they perceive as being like an intruder into their body. And so it depends on how you react to something. If it's a food allergy, then you get hives, you swell up, you could go into anaphylactic shock. I mean, it's all of the immediate reactions, but food sensitivity could take up to 4 days to have a reaction. And that could be headaches, brain fog, sleep disorders, stomach upset. I mean, there's any number, or joint pain, heartburn. I mean, there's any number of things that how it can affect you that, you're going to think, what did I just do? And it was actually something you ate 4 days ago, which is why it makes it so hard to sometimes figure out what it is that you're having a reaction to, and why when you do an elimination diet, you can't just go off of something for a day. You have to be really good about it for like 2 weeks at least, and then really see how it is that you feel. And then if you clear everything out of your system from an elimination diet, then you can, and you feel rock solid, then you can slowly integrate one new thing and see after like a week or so, okay, how do I feel? And so I'm constantly in a process of doing that and trying to figure out, okay, what is still giving me migraines or giving me, sinus pressure or any of that kind of stuff.
Now, so on this note, this is part of the good news. There are things people can do. You can very carefully monitor your diet, take things out, try new things, and so on. Bigger picture stuff. Is the litigation going to ruin these people? Is there legislation that's coming? How is this going to change on a massive level eventually?
I don't think so.
Oh,
That's
never
one of
mind,
the
folks. There isn't good news.
sorry.
We're screwed.
One of the saddest things that I have found, because I made this film quite some time ago. It's taken a long time for it to come out, and I thought, oh my goodness, so much is going to be out of date by the time it eventually comes out. And the sad thing is, none of it is out of date. We haven't gotten so much farther. Now there is litigation going on, and so maybe some of that will help in certain ways. Gluten-free is now said on products, which is fantastic, and there's a lot more farmers markets. There's a lot more organic farmers out there. So there's a lot more opportunity to eat better, to learn. There's, my film, my books, and a whole bunch of other people out there that are also putting out things that can really help you. And I really encourage people to read those books and experiment, because if you don't feel well, there's a really good chance that it's something that you're eating. So change how you eat and see if you feel better. Don't accept feeling like crap for the rest of your life. That's no fun. So, and your doctor's not going to do it because they're not trained in it. They're not looking for that. So,
Yeah,
and if like one of the things sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's a little discouraging that the medical community is so far behind on this. But on the other hand, it's nice that you have a DIY option here. All you got to do, what if you take one food out and all your problems will go away? Suddenly you don't need all these meds. Suddenly your blood pressure lowers or whatever the thing is. So,
Right.
So all good news, and we will put resources to that. All as many links as you want to send, we will put them in the on the YouTube page and in the social media. But before I go, the film, if you finished it, How was it received? Did you get festival circuit, distribution? How did that all go?
It played a couple little festivals, or got a couple little laurels, and now Indie Rights is the digital distributor for it, and so it's available on Amazon Prime. Just recently it was added on there, so free with Prime membership, so hopefully everybody can see it that way. It's free on Tubi, tubi.tv, which is on a lot of people's smart TVs now, and Google Play and YouTube. You can rent it for just a couple bucks, or buy it. You can buy it for a couple bucks too. So
you've not turned a profit on this yet, have you?
Oh dear God, no, never.
Folks, rent or buy. She needs the help. Okay.
You can watch it for free. I'll still get money from that. But
okay, there's
I
that.
encourage you to buy the companion cookbook and the companion interviews, because the extended interviews in the book will tell you so. Because obviously it's an hour and a half long film. There's a lot of information, but there's a lot that ended up on the cutting room floor. And so the extended interviews in the book tell you so much more, which should make you just scream and call your congressman. So that's what we want. We want to start a movement.
Yes, come on, civic action, folks. There's a pandemic. You're sitting around. Call your congressman. Make some noise about this. Exactly. The film is called the Fight for Allergy.
It's called Fighting for Allergy-Free Food.
Fighting for Allergy-Free Food.
And the website is fightingforallergyfreefood.com, and it will tell you everything.
Available on YouTube, Google Play, Tubi, and Amazon Prime. Folks, save your lives. Watch this. Eat better, effective now. Tamar Kummel, thank you so much for joining us.
There you have it. Another interview in the books. Isn't she terrific? Isn't she smart? She's on it. She knows all about this stuff. And yeah, you pull on one thread and it just unravels, and more stuff you learn and it causes more questions. She's right. Yeah, it's a terrible situation. And yet we're mostly still here and we're aware of it. I think that's huge. Increasing awareness. There are steps you can take. I think it's kind of a sad commentary that one of the steps you can take is not ask your doctor. That's not good. We're supposed to be able to trust our doctors, and in some instances we can't. And don't go on WebMD either, because WebMD, it's one of those choose your own adventure books where the adventure always ends in you might die. So don't go there. Just use some common sense. And you know what I'm doing? Because it's St. Patrick's Day somewhere in the universe, I'm continuing my little St. Patrick's Day celebration. I had 2 of these Wednesday night, and it's late afternoon here on Friday, but hey, I've earned it. Like I said, I had a good week. So I don't know if it's allergy-free or not, and I don't care. Not because I'm drunk, but because I'm just kind of enjoying myself. Haven't even had a sip of this yet. So, yummy. Thanks for joining us, everybody. I hope you learned a lot. I hope you come back. I hope you forward this, because I'm still building this. I'm still trying to build my little media empire here. So if you could all just please forward this to 500 of your closest friends, it would mean the world to me. And, just in the spirit of the documentary, take care of yourself. Seriously, watch what goes into you. Just be aware of it, huh? Make an effort. You'll feel better. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could get rid of one of your problems just by changing your diet? And I don't just mean health problems. I mean other problems. You got a bad roommate? Eat some Limburger cheese. That might get rid of the roommate, huh?